Evelyn had always known the sound of the creaking pine floorboards in her childhood home. She could still hear them echo in her mind. A plaintive, hollow groan that seemed to register the weight of her mother's disappointment each time she tiptoed down to the kitchen for a sliver of forbidden cheese. She was 16 when she first understood that her heart beat differently, that the sermons preached each Sunday about purity and obedience were hollow chambers masking her true self. Every morning, her reflection in the mirror held a secret she dared not speak, the tenderness that bloomed in her chest whenever she saw Naomi's smile. Soon, those echoes of shame and desire intertwined, and she realized the church's doctrines sought to cage the very essence of who she was. Her mother, Marissa, embodied the quiet, fierce devotion of the faithful: white cotton dresses, immaculately styled hair, and a gentle smile that never wavered in public. But behind closed doors, Evelyn watched Marissa cry into her pillow more often than laugh, as though the secret spill of tears would cleanse her of sins she hadn't committed. Evelyn's father, Robert, boomed with saccharine assurance about the righteousness of their faith, draping scriptures over every moment of daily life. And her brothers, Nathan and Stephen, followed blindly, mouths reciting prayers while their hearts remained undiscovered. In every corner of the house, faith whispered its demands: obedience first, questions never. It began with small acts of defiance: an extra minute under the covers reading Pride and Prejudice, a stolen glance at the rain kissing the windowpane while the family prayed. She learned to measure her breathing, to swallow the rising shame like bile whenever her mother saw the novel peeking from under the mattress. But her heart skipped a beat when she encountered Naomi at a youth group meeting. Naomi's laugh was sharp and modern, her eyes calculating, curious. She didn't speak the language of hymns, she spoke in irony and half-smiles. Evelyn found herself drawn to that difference, to the way Naomi's presence felt like sunlight through the stained glass windows she secretly loathed. One summer afternoon, they wandered into an abandoned chapel on the edge of town, peeling paint crumbling from the rafters, light spilling in through broken stained glass like shards of a forgotten promise. There, Evelyn found herself trembling as Naomi slipped her hand into her own. It was both terrifying and electrifying. The touch seemed to sear her veins with forbidden longing. Their secret meetings felt like stolen air. Evelyn lived for every whispered conversation about literature, about beliefs she dreamed of questioning. In that dusty silence, their hands pressed together, and for the first time, Evelyn felt her soul pulse without the weight of doctrine. The winter she turned 17, she was baptized into the faith her parents nurtured. They celebrated in their living room, tears staining their cheeks as she emerged from the baptistry clad in white. Marissa kissed her on the cheek, whispering, "I'm so proud." But Evelyn recoiled inwardly. The cold water seemed less a rebirth than a surrender. She forced her lips into a smile while her heart trembled, repeating empty promises to God she didn't believe in. She had worn that white dress for her mother's approval, but with every step she felt herself fracturing. Behind locked doors, Evelyn's soul ached. She prayed at night for forgiveness, for release, for a way to be both true to herself and still be loved. But the scriptures offered no solace, only whispered condemnations in the dark. She fell into a restless sleep, plagued by dreams of her father's booming voice calling her weak, her mother's hollow smile retreating in sorrow. In her solitude, she scribbled in a notebook lines of fury, longing, and dread. She cataloged each moment of heartbreak: the time her father discovered the lipstick stain in her journal, the time her mother cornered her, asking if she felt temptations she couldn't explain. One night, after a particularly violent row with her father, his accusation that she was losing her way because she questioned the church's teachings, Evelyn felt something shatter inside her. She packed a small duffel bag, a change of clothes, her sketchbook, two favorite books Naomi had lent her. She scribbled a shaky note for her parents, words half crystal clear, half blurred by tears. "I'm sorry I couldn't be what you wanted." She left through the back door before dawn, the cold morning air biting at her exposed skin as she walked away from the life she had known. The first few nights, she slept in her grandmother's old camper outside of town. Her grandmother, her only rebel among generations of devout ancestors, welcomed her with gentle arms. She saw Evelyn's wide, terrified eyes and said nothing about politics or faith. Instead, she made her coffee in a chipped enamel mug and let her breathe. "You can stay here," she said, voice soft as moss. "No one will ask." Evelyn spent mornings sketching the forest's edge, the gnarled oaks, the way sunlight fractured into glittering prisms. She felt both free and empty, as though freedom had a hollow echo identical to fear. But invisibility breeds loneliness. She craved Naomi's voice, her laugh, her sharp intelligence. They moved into a small apartment together, two second-hand mattresses on the floor, a wobbly desk, and a chipped couch that smelled faintly of smoke. It was cold and drafty in the winter, but Evelyn felt warmth in Naomi's steady presence. Naomi didn't care that she was ex-Mormon, she cared that Evelyn could recite whole passages of Austen. She listened to Evelyn's confessions, how she had hidden her true self behind hymns, how she'd prayed for a life she'd never live. Their nights were spent tangled in blankets, whispered conversations drifting into the small hours. Months passed. Evelyn found a job at the local bookstore, stacking shelves, recommending books to customers whose eyes didn't understand her secret turmoil. Each day, she felt herself growing more curious about the world beyond the urgencies of doctrine. She read poems about love that didn't require repentance, essays about women who refused to acquiesce. She sketched late into the night, the curves of Naomi's profile, the way her fingertips curled around the spines of books. Yet guilt clung to her like tar, every pang of joy a reminder of the life and family she'd left behind. On her 19th birthday, Marissa came to visit. She held Evelyn's face in her hands, eyes swollen red, voice trembling. "Why did you leave me?" she asked, Evelyn's chest convulsed. "I had to," she whispered. "I felt like I was drowning." Marissa's hands shook. "You are my daughter," she said. "I love you." For a moment, Evelyn thought she could believe her. But the hurt lingered behind the apology, a wound that pulsed with memory. The prayers recited on Sunday mornings, the cold bed at night, the weight of expectations she couldn't fulfill. That night after Marissa left, Evelyn found herself collapsing into tears. Naomi held her as though she might shatter. Evelyn whispered, "I'm scared I'll never be good enough." Naomi kissed her hair. "You are already more than enough." Evelyn wanted to believe it. She wanted to feel the solidity of those words, to let them anchor her jagged heart. Over the next months, Evelyn's life unfolded in subtle ways. She joined a writer's workshop, where she met people whose lives overflowed with complexity. She tried tequila for the first time at a reading downtown, recoiling at the burn. She bought a tattered leather jacket at a thrift store. She went to her first concert and felt the bass thump through her chest like a heartbeat. She tasted freedom, but freedom came spiked with loneliness. She missed the predictability of her old life, even as she hated its confines. She returned home for Christmas. The chapel was decked in evergreen garlands, the organ echoed the hymns she once sang. Her father stood at the front, older, grayer, his suit pressed. Her brothers nodded curtly, their faces unreadable. Marissa rushed to embrace her, tears in her eyes. Evelyn felt the old scar tighten, a fissure between them that no smile could bridge. They exchanged pleasantries. "What do you study? Do you have a job?" But each word felt like a mask. At dinner time, they said grace, and Evelyn tasted the bitterness of words she no longer believed. Weeks later, Evelyn discovered her mother's diary hidden beneath a stack of framed family photos. The pages revealed Marissa's turmoil. Her fear that Evelyn would be lost forever, her shame at the neighbors' whispers. Evelyn read her mother's agony in tiny script. "Is my daughter damned? I don't understand why she turned away." She realized that pain was universal, faith and doubt, love and grief woven into the fabric of their lives. She pressed the diary to her chest, as though it might contain a key to her mother's heart and perhaps her own. On her 21st birthday, Evelyn published her first short story in a local literary journal. The piece was a thinly veiled rendering of her life, the echo of the chapel, the weight of secrets, the silent love she carried for Naomi. When she held the printed pages in her hands, she felt an unfamiliar stillness. As though the story existed both inside her and outside, no longer haunting her. Naomi kissed her on the cheek, whispering, "You did it." Evelyn felt the tremor of pride course through her chest, a warmth more radiant than any sermon ever preached. That evening, Evelyn called her father. It was the first time they had spoken without anger. "I read your story," he said, voice thick. "It was beautiful and painful. Please know I'm proud of you." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered. She realized then that forgiveness wasn't a gift one person could grant another. It was a journey they walked separately, sometimes in parallel. She closed her eyes, feeling both a release and a tether, the ties of family that neither doctrine nor distance could sever completely. Now, as she walked across the stage to receive her degree, a creative writing major with honors, Evelyn knew she was free in ways she once couldn't imagine. She wore a black cap and gown, tassels swaying as she stepped toward the microphone. She looked out at her parents sitting in the front row. Marissa's cheeks glimmered with tears. Robert's face was stoic, but his eyes glistened. She thought of the creaking pine floorboards, of the hollow groans that once echoed through her childhood home. She thought of Naomi, waiting for her in the audience, eyes bright with pride. As she descended the steps, the hall erupted in applause. Evelyn felt the weight of every secret, every confession, every stolen moment dissolve in the echo of that sound. She was not ashamed, she was not broken. She was luminous, an ex-Mormon girl who had finally learned how to breathe. Later, she and Naomi moved to a cottage by the sea. Each sunrise warmed their faces as Evelyn sketched the ocean. She sometimes wrote truthful letters to her mother, affirming that love endures always.